I really love that Star Wars thing you got there.
You know, I got that in, I guess, 95 from like a media play.
Oh, okay.
And, you know, back then I was like really into Star Wars, you know, like really into it because that was like the heyday. But I've been thinking about actually getting rid of it.
Really?
Yeah, like not rid of it, like maybe not throw it away, but like put it in the attic or something because I don't have any passion for Star Wars right now. I'm burnt out. Like I'm absolutely just burnt.
So you're jonesing for a new fandom then?
I am jonesing for a new fandom. I'm looking for something.
You know, you should try Doctor Who. It's vintage. It's from England, which you lived in England.
I did.
I think it would be something that you could get into.
I'm not going to say that you're wrong, but I just don't know because there's like 50 years of TV. Mm-hmm. There's like 500 frickin' doctors. I don't even know where to start. I don't know if I want to make that kind of time investment. I mean...
Can I sweeten the pot a little bit?
Yeah.
Try that on, guys.
Wait. So you're saying that Kylie Minogue is part of Doctor Who?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm in. I'm in. Finally. This has been a long time coming.
It has been.
We've been planning this for what, 4 months, 5 months?
Yeah, well, you know.
When was the live stream?
Yeah, when was on the stream?
About 5 or 6 months ago, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's when the wheels started turning.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So you're the expert here. You're
God.
you're the timestamps guy with all the clout. I mean, you're the man about town.
Yeah.
We're eating jelly babies. By the way,
we promise not to chew into the mics.
I promise not to chew on the mics. These or them. Would you like a jelly baby?
Oh, why? Thank you,
jelly baby. Thank you. All right.
So yeah, it's been a long time coming. I guess for the people who didn't watch the live stream, we should probably. Well, you need no introduction. This is your channel,
But they could always go back and watch the live stream.
Right.
They could.
So I guess maybe we should, quick introductions and maybe really quickly, how we got into Doctor Who, and what it means to you personally.
Would you like to start?
Oh, sure. Well, my name is Michael Falkner. I do the Timestamps project on Creative Criticality. That's at creativecriticality.net. Been doing that now for about 4.5 years. I have just broken through in my watching of Doctor Who from the very beginning of the franchise. Going sequentially through each serial, I've finally broken out of the classic era. I just watched the last one. I went through the 8th Doctor's version of Shada. And so coming up here very shortly, I'll be starting into the Eccleston era with Rose.
Right.
And how long has that taken you?
That's 4.5 years of Doctor Who.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's on a nearly weekly basis. There was a little bit of a delay in there one time when I lost a hard drive, and then the files were gone.
Right.
Because everything I've got is on the hard drives.
No, you watched it legally, right?
Well,
yes.
Yes. All I can say is thank goodness for Friends, because there are a lot of there's a lot of stuff missing, as we know from Doctor Who.
Yes.
Right.
And they were able to source the reconstructions and stuff. So when I was like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this, okay, well, let me help you get there.
Right.
It's
Right.
those kind of friends who are just like, I've got this. I'm going to help you get there.
Right.
And I really owe them a debt of gratitude for that, especially looking back on this journey.
And so now, right as you've gotten finished with the classic era, you're now starting this video cast.
Yeah.
And in some cases, for some people, it'll be listening as a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like it's the typewriter going ka-ching, like you're starting over again?
Well, in a sense, yes, but also because it's really an evolution for me of the Timestamps project. As we had talked about before, as we were deciding what to do, we decided not to tread on the Timestamps project itself and go basically what I've already done. I really hate repeating myself when it comes to content because it's already done once. I don't want to do it again.
And there are a lot of other Doctor Who podcasts and things out there. We don't want to do what everybody else is doing.
Right, exactly.
But the way that we came up with differentiating this was that not only are we going to talk about the episodes and how we think they hold up and the deeper analysis on some of it and some of the funny stuff and whatever else that everyone else talks about, but we've also got Michael. Mm-hmm. who is a big behind the scenes film guy, right?
Yes.
And that's really the aspect I was hoping we could bring to it was, not only talk about the adventures and okay, well, the fourth Doctor did this, and that was a callback to the second Doctor, all that other cool stuff. But then also like, okay, well, what about the producers? What about the writers? You know, how are things working behind the scenes at the BBC? And that's the kind of stuff that you love, Michael, to really dive into.
I'm a crack addict when it comes to that. I mean, that stuff is really what gets me going. I could watch restoration videos, like documentaries about film and TV restorations for days on end and never get bored. I mean, like, I love that stuff. And so I actually ended up working Doctor Who backwards because I started watching interviews with Tom Baker for fun, like because he was such a cool guy. And then the next thing I knew, I was watching not just Tom Baker interviews, but I was watching documentaries about Doctor Who episodes that I'd never seen that were talking about the making of this and the BBC drama here and this person regenerating into this person and what that meant for the business and what the risks were. And, you know, then the whole thing about finding lost episodes and all that kind of stuff and the Doctor Who restoration team. I knew about all of that before I ever really sat down and watched one actual Doctor Who episode.
Had you seen it at all during your time in the UK? Or
No,
like,
I saw the paraphernalia.
that's
I
it.
never saw, because I moved there in 1990, which was 1 year after the show had ended, probably 6 months after the show ended.
Wow.
Yeah, so the magazine was still being published, and so I saw that at the newsagents. But I knew what Doctor Who was as a property, but I never saw an episode.
Because it's almost like, you know, like Paddington is to the
Yes.
UK. It's a cultural touchstone.
Yeah.
But since I guess they weren't in production, it just never really crossed your path.
It never crossed my path there, as a kid, I was too young to watch it in the sense that I think it came on fairly late on PBS. It was probably after my bedtime.
Yeah, it depended, and I'm kind of cut in between the two
Yeah,
of you. I was a fan when it was on, and I love behind the scene stuff, so I'm kind of like a meld.
Right.
But in my area, they played it every Saturday afternoon, and they would run like 4 episodes at a time. So some weeks I got a full story, and some weeks I got like half a story, and they actually would do them in order. So if it was a 3-part episode followed by another, so it would be like 3 parts, and then the first part, and then come back next week. But they would also sometimes run it at 11:30 after Monty Python, and I know there were some other stations that ran at different times. And then when I was in high school, the local PBS station started doing Monday through Friday, an episode every day at 5:30, starting from the Hartnell era. So I got to see a good chunk of that early stuff.
Wow.
Did they include any of the reconstructions? Or
No,
were just
they
giant
just
holes?
they were just holes.
Wow. That's cool. See, because when I started, it was on Netflix, and I tried to watch it casually because so many friends had recommended it to me, and they were saying it's British. It's the guy wears a fedora. You know, it's sci-fi. It's retro. It's up your alley. So Netflix didn't have it in any order. They just had stories without any flow. You know, they didn't have it organized by season and order. So I just picked one that I thought sounded interesting, which was Ark in Space. And I watched it, and I was like, oh, this is cool. And then I watched Pyramids of Mars because I love the whole Ark, pyramids, the whole thing. So I was just like kind of
Shooting some guy with a whip.
Yeah. So I was just kind of following my way through and sticking with the guy that wore the hat the whole time. And as it turned out, I became more fascinated with the person that traveled with him, Sarah Jane Smith, to the point that I kind of carry a torch for Sarah Jane Smith. So yeah,
for our audio listeners,
A lot of us do.
Yeah, I'm wearing a K9 and Company T-shirt for this first vidcast. So
and that's an amazing like deep cut.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
There's a sickness here. I'm broken. So
Yeah, I still remember when it aired on my local PBS station, and it was like, okay, I like it, maybe, but
it was a solid pilot. But that's it definitely needed work. And
the main thing was the opening credits, which you can go into this. Were so weird,
right?
Yeah.
Even as a kid, I was like, what's this?
Yeah, and they made those opening credits for Tom Baker's 12th season, his first season, season 12 of the show. From what I understand, they went in and did those special for that new Doctor because John Pertwee had been such a famous Doctor for I believe 5 years, and they said, well, this is a big change because we're going with a new guy. We got to have a new intro.
Yeah, well, I meant the K9 and Company intro.
Oh, I'm sorry. My apologies. Yeah, the K9 and Company intro was a a boondoggle. Like it was John Nathan Turner, the showrunner at the time, saying to Elizabeth Sladen, who'd never worked with him before, I don't think. They hadn't done the Five Doctors yet. And he had said to her, hey, when you come on location today, make sure you bring a few of your own clothes, maybe some workout clothes and some other things. And she's like, what? And she's like, what? And he goes, well, we're going to shoot an intro. And she's like, oh, we are just in a few hours? Great. So she ends up, she goes, why are we shooting? He goes, I want it to be like heart to heart. And she's like, what? So like the camera guy's like, jog slower. And she's like, you can't jog slower. So that's why when she jogs by camera, she looks so weird because they did that like 5 takes, and each take the camera guy was like, jog slower. And she said it was just a mess. The only bad thing about K9 and Company is the intro. I mean, everything else about it's solid, classic Who stories. I mean, it's, so.
Yeah, and it's almost a lead into the Sarah Jane Adventures. Like, it's what could have been.
Right.
How many decades down the road for Sarah Jane Adventures.
Yeah. And not to make it a Sarah Jane episode to go into any great detail, but it is interesting that John Nathan Turner and then Russell T Davies both in 2 separate eras in disparate decades both saw that companion as being the person that needed a spinoff, the character that needed more exploration. That's one example of many that's been fascinating me about Doctor Who's history, both in front of the camera and behind the camera. So that's, I guess, why I'm here soaking it all up now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting when you talk about that. It's Sarah Jane and the Fourth Doctor are really, in a sense, the heart of classic Who.
Right.
And it says a lot that she has received not only the K9 and Company spinoff and the Sarah Jane Adventure spinoff, but also the Sarah Jane Big Finish.
Right.
All these things where they just keep coming back to that same, almost that same well in a sense, but it's a good source of water.
Absolutely. I mean, why did they decide, with all the effort they have to go through to put classic Doctor Who on Blu-ray, why did they decide to start with the first Tom Baker season that happens to be the beginning of the Baker-Sladen era, which is considered one of the keystones in classic Who? Well, there's a reason. We're all trying to figure out what it is, but we all know it. We just can't name it.
Right.
Well, there's that chemistry. Well, first off, it's the chemistry between her and Baker.
I'm a Time Lord.
Oh, I know you're a Time Lord.
You don't understand the implications.
Right.
She had great chemistry with Pertwee, but it's when the two of them pair up that it's magic. They have a chemistry that you can't fake.
You must destroy them. You must complete your mission for the Time Lords.
Do I have the right?
I mean, there's a lot of times where there's a companion and you're like, well, they're okay. They kind of get along with the Doctor. But then there are the ones like her where it's just like, yes, this is a perfect pairing. This is like Steed and Peel.
Right.
This is I'm trying to think of others. Starsky and Hutch. It's like
Riggs and Murtaugh.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. You're right. There was a moment during the shooting of the Five Doctors, as you both know, where they had to break out Tom Baker's mannequin from Madame Tussauds because he didn't participate in the special, and they did this photo shoot. And Elizabeth Sladen was there, and John Pertwee was there, and the other doctors were there, and and the other companions, and they were doing this photo shoot. And John Pertwee kept taking shots at Tom Baker as a performer, and finally Elizabeth Sladen said in her autobiography, she just looked over at him and she said, "Say one more thing." She's like, "And I'm out of here." And he was like, Pertwee was just kind of taken aback because she and him were close friends too. Yeah. Because her point was, she's like, I don't think you've internalized the fact that I got along with Tom. Tom was not your enemy. Tom didn't make you quit the show.
Yeah.
Tom just succeeded you.
Right.
And that's it. And he and I got along, really well on set. And that comes across in this era. That comes across.
Yeah, both as actors and as characters. For me, they really do yin and yang. He can be serious yet playful, and she can be serious and yet playful at the same time. She knows when to go along with his humor. She knows when to go, Doctor, hey.
Because if Sutek isn't stopped, he'll destroy the world.
But he didn't, did he?
Yeah. What did you think when you were going through it in order, and then all of a sudden you hit that era? Was there a marked shift that you perceived?
There was a marked shift in the Pertwee area just because it was colorized, and they really amped up, I guess, in a way, the budget, in a sense, because they shift to color, they shift to more of a James Bond type format. There's a lot more going on. And then when it comes to the shift to Tom Baker, it was palpable. Like Pertwee was okay for me. I enjoy Pertwee as an actor. I enjoy the Third Doctor's era. It was pretty good. It was solid.
You ever heard of UNIT?
You work for UNIT?
But like you said, there's a chemistry that just there's something new in the reaction that just really defines the Fourth Doctor, Sarah Jane, in the 12th season, and that was exactly what it was. There was a shift, and there's a lot more humor.
Well, you can't go rushing off and leave them in the lurch.
Can't I? Goodbye.
It's not the pointed, barbed humor that Pertwee was known for. It's goofy humor.
Right.
You know, it's a breath of fresh air into the mythology, into the show.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And that says a lot as to why we chose to start here, you know, for this show that we're doing. Because there was a lot of discussion about where do we begin? Do we begin like Timestamps did at the very beginning and try to barrel through 1963, you know, the reconstructions, the black and white, the very uneven pace that those early seasons had? Do we start with, you know, Eccleston and do the new stuff to try to bring people in, and then go back and experience the old stuff? And given that I have a love for this era, even though Tom Baker's not my Doctor, he's still, you know, still there as a good era. Gary, you said before, Tom Baker is your Doctor.
Yeah.
You know, he's where you started. He's where it was part of your childhood.
Yes.
And we, you know, obviously you've got a love for Sarah Jane and for Tom Baker and for this entire era with the behind the scenes. It made perfect sense to start here.
Yeah.
You know, watching the Blu-rays and going through. Starting with this and then spinning off somewhere else. The show is called "Who's the Doctor? Talking Outside the Box," and that's because we really want to explore, you know, outside of the box that is the normal Doctor Who podcast, like what surrounds it, you know, like with the behind the scenes and the culture and that kind of stuff, because we're all pop culture junkies,
Right.
And then also discussing, well, who is the Doctor? You know, it's not just one Doctor. It's not just, you know, one actor. It's this show has gone on for 55 years.
Right.
You know, there's a reason for that continued presence. Like we said, it's like Paddington in the UK. It's a cultural touchstone. Why is that? And that's what we want to figure out.
I was just going to say that when you've seen the logo, yes, Tom Baker is Gary's Doctor, yet Gary is dressed as Sylvester McCoy, and that is because I did make the suggestion that I be caricatured as Sarah Jane Smith, and everybody vetoed that. They didn't want to see that. They said no, and I was like, "That's fine." You know, I was willing to go along with it, but that's cool. So they gave me Tom Baker by default because of my love for Sarah Jane Smith, but I want to take nothing away from Gary's love for Tom Baker.
And you have the hat.
Yeah,
I do have the hat. That's true.
And let's be honest, it was either Tom Baker or Sarah Jane Smith in her Hand of Fear coverall or overalls.
Oh no! Let's not even do that. Let's not go
Yeah,
there.
you vetoed that one.
I did.
I'll start at the beginning.
Good.
We found a hand in the quarry.
This is actually a discussion we should have, like, because everybody always talks about, well, so and so is my Doctor, and I fully admit Baker is my Doctor because I started with him. I love the way he performed the role. You know, he's the one that imprinted on me. But that doesn't take away from any of the other Doctors. There's no Doctor that I don't like.
Right.
You're expecting someone else?
Even Six.
Right.
Right.
And I can tolerate him. I don't hate him though.
Yeah, and that's a very important distinction. There's enjoying the show for the actors, which all the actors are solid Doctors, and then there's with the points where the show falls on its own sword sometimes, which is the production aspect.
Yes.
And that's kind of where, you know, Colin Baker's seasons, his tenure fell down. There were a lot of internal strife issues.
Yeah, and the writing aspect too is key in any production of any property, but especially with Doctor Who. You know, I've probably watched more behind the scenes stuff with the Sixth Doctor's transition, both in and out of the role, than a lot of the other Doctors. And it is kind of stunning to think that, you know, John Nathan Turner hires this guy, Colin Baker, who's a great actor. The guy could act his way, you know, through a ninja fight. I mean, he's just an amazing dude. Yeah. And he was known for playing heavies in British drama. But then John Nathan Turner decides, I'm gonna take a guy who plays a heavy, who could play a good guy. Like he's got the chops, but I want him to play an acerbic, affronting Doctor for a while. And I just don't know if that was the right move. It's like maybe you should have taken Colin Baker's skill and turned the audience's expectations over into what, because let me explain. You've got audience's expectations for Doctor Who, and then you've got audience's expectations for Colin Baker as a performer because of what they've seen in The Brothers and some of the other shows that he did. Why not, instead of flipping the script on Doctor Who, you flip the script on the expectations coming from the audience for Colin Baker? Instead, he did it the opposite way. He's like, oh no, let's give people what they expect from Colin Baker and imprint it on Doctor Who. And I'm like, that's a bad move.
Yeah, that and the original idea is interesting. Of what if something went wrong with the regeneration? What if the Doctor takes a little while to even himself out? And I think that would work really well today. It's kind of what they tried to do with Capaldi.
Yes.
But at that time, it's like I said, it's an interesting idea, but I think they dragged it out too long. They should have been over like maybe the opening serial, and then by the end of the opening serial, or maybe the next one, but it went on too long.
Yeah.
They forgot what the core of the Doctor was.
Right.
That's exactly
Yeah, and this isn't even me making a joke. It was also a big mistake to put him in that costume.
Yeah.
It was a big mistake.
And that, again, we hang that on Nathan Turner because
Yes.
he was the one that, if you look, every Doctor up to him, it's pretty much normal, if a little eccentric clothing.
Right.
And, then we get the celery stalk. And then we get this Technicolor vomit of him.
Yeah, and people that worked with him said in retrospect they think that was John Nathan Turner trying to put himself in the show.
Yeah.
He would have wanted to wear that sort of garish outfit.
He was famous for his Hawaiian shirts.
Yes. He had like a Magnum PI fixation with his Hawaiian shirts or whatever it was.
And they kind of tried to fix it with the webcast real time, where they put him into that blue outfit, which it was leagues better than the Technicolor whatever that thing was.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But Turner's also the one who put the question marks on everything. And gave McCoy the sweater with all the question marks and everything.
Right. First he put it on Tom Baker's collar, then he put it on Davison, then he put it on Colin Baker, and then he put it on McCoy.
McCoy hated that jumper.
Yeah, I would imagine
hated
so.
that jumper with a passion, which is why it does not appear in the TV movie.
Oh, good.
Yeah, because he was like, I lost it. I don't know where it went.
That's awesome. That's great.
So what do we hope to achieve? I mean, we've got a long road ahead of us.
Well, what do we hope to achieve?
Yeah, so I mean, what do we hope to achieve?
I'm going to have a jelly baby. That's what I'm going to achieve.
What do we hope to achieve with trying to analyze this, knowing that it's going to take us probably years and years and years to catch up to Doctor?
You see, I cunningly put food in his mouth, so I go first. I'm hoping that we bring a new discussion with a good angle to it, and that we show that Doctor Who is for everybody. It doesn't matter if you've been watching since you were a kid or if you've just recently come to it. There's going to be something. It doesn't matter. It may not be every era, but there's going to be an era that you can find that you can go, yes, this is my thing. I love this. And you can still, even if you're not a big fan of like the modern era or some of the older era, if you're a new Who fan, welcome. If you're an old Who fan, welcome. But you can still appreciate everything else. And the one thing I think everybody always forgets is because we're coming into a new Doctor cycle, and there's that meme that's been around forever of here's the Doctor Who regeneration dealing with it cycle.
Yeah.
We're coming into this we're leaving this person was the best Doctor ever. Who the heck is this person? You're going to be terrible.
This is the death of Doctor Who.
Right.
To remind people that no, just hang on, and even if this era isn't to your liking, the next era may be.
Right.
And you may grow into this Doctor, or to any Doctor as well.
Yeah.
There was as much consternation as there was with 6, and his early seasons were terrible. In my opinion, I'm not impressing that on anybody else. Just to be clear.
Right.
I'm not saying you're wrong.
Right. Trial of the Time Lord, I thought was actually very well constructed. It still fell apart in places, but it was very well constructed, and I really would have loved to have seen what would happen beyond season 23, I think it is, moving forward, because
also that's the point where it was the Doctor finally was over his regeneration sickness, and from there it would have been.
And sadly, it never came to pass. But what about you? What do you hope to achieve, Michael?
Well, and I'm looking at this, and I'm seeing the legacy fan who's been there, since the time that I wish I could have been there from. I was alive but not aware. I see the scholar who has devoted himself to, forensically looking at every single story in detail and then chronicling that, and you've just gotten done with that. And then I'm looking at myself like this wacky lost newbie that just finally showed up to the party, you know, and it's kind of like I showed up to the party, but as with all things I do, once I find that foothold that I can get my toe in, suddenly I'm in full bore, and I'm just, you know, yeah, I'm getting the DVDs from the UK, and I'm doing this. Oh, I got to read Elizabeth Sladen's biography, and you know, I'm doing all of it. You know, my Kindle bill is like out of control right now. I'm like, oh, I can get these books.
Well, you know, I've always been meaning to tell you, it's the fact that you're such a casual fan who has such little interest in things. It's one of your character qualities you should work on.
I appreciate that. Thank you for the feedback.
You're in the position I was in 4.5 years ago, and one thing I really love about fandoms, about pop culture, and the reason I keep doing all these analyses and podcasts and everything else is because I want to share the things that I have found that I enjoy with other people, and when they key in on it, when they jump into it,
Right.
you know, and they start kind of falling in love. I like seeing that evolution of fandom.
Yeah.
You know, there are aspects sometimes, you know, like I know I'm big into Farscape. Gary has do not say Farscape around me,
Right,
kind of thing.
right.
And I know that's never going to happen, so I don't key on that. But when you said Doctor Who, man, like, okay, let's talk.
Yeah,
let's get this going.
Yeah.
And it's good that, you know, we've all worked really well together at Dragon Con, on RetroBlasting, on, you know, through RevSF, through all those other venues.
Right.
And it seemed reasonable that this would be, you know, this would be the team.
It's kind of like three people who finally are like, you know, we're all really into cars. Why don't we build a car together?
Yeah.
You know, we should just build a car.
Great, let's build a car.
All right, so we're building a car, people. This is our car, and this is
It's a blue car. It's kind of square.
That's right. It's bigger on the inside than it is on the outside.
Yes.
Yeah.
The way we're talking about doing this is we are going to start with season 12, which means we're watching Robot, Ark in Space, Santana Experiment, Genesis Daleks, Revenge of the Cybermen.
Right.
Each of those serials we're thinking should be one episode.
Right.
Once we get to that, we're going to put up the first voting. Probably around Genesis of the Daleks, we should probably start the voting process.
Yeah. Because we'll still have time for, you know, behind the scenes type stuff and everything else we're working on.
Right.
And then, you know, by that point, hopefully they can.
Yeah. So anybody who Patrons even at the $1 level will get a vote.
Yeah.
Right.
And, you know, and all votes are equal.
Yep. Absolutely.
People who pay more don't get extra votes.
That's right.
Although we appreciate everyone who pays extra.
Right. And like I said, it's going to be a curated list because we don't want to. Being that Michael is new at this, you know, we don't want to say, okay, well, here's Tom Baker, and then we're doing Trial of Time Lord next. You know,
No, Twin Dilemma is next.
I have watched some of it.
Right.
Yeah.
I can dig into it fast. Thank you, BritBox.
But I think that in terms of the discussion itself, you know, like there's a lot we could build on with season 12, and to just throw it open and say, okay, the 55-year, you know, window is open. Whatever you guys choose, what we're going to go for. We could really have the non sequitur type stuff, and I really want to see this kind of build up in a sense as almost like a guide for newbies. Like if you're willing to jump in like Michael does and say, you know, I'm gonna buy the Blu-ray set for $12. Where do I go from here? You know, we almost want to be like that, not just like turn somebody off right away by somebody commandeering the vote and saying, okay, well, we're gonna go to, you know, some weird place next.
Right. Exactly. You know? Yeah. We don't want that.
Yeah.
And I would like to once again put a shout out to the people who encouraged us to do this, the Who live stream that we did.
God, yes.
All those people, the one you want to talk about? Oh, that
That's right here. Yeah. They're here.
Oh yeah, Carl. That was this is a sonic screwdriver that our friend and supporter Carl sent us that he got at the Chicago Doctor Who convention in 1986. I mean, this is one of those, you know, original sort of semi-pro fan-made props, and that right there is part of Who history for fans. That's Who fan history right there. Yeah. And you don't see those come up very often. You know, it's kind of like we were talking about with the lightsaber hilts that were advertised in the back of Tomart's Action Figure Digest and Starlog.
Yeah.
You don't see those for sale on eBay ever. Like they might have gotten thrown away, they might have disappeared, they might never have actually purchased any. You don't know. So that right there, that shows, that's proof positive of how entrenched Doctor Who fandom is. Yeah. So who had a metal lathe back in 1986 to do that?
Right.
Yeah.
To piece it together. I mean,
And if you have one of those old lightsabers, don't send it to us. You know, that's but take a picture and send it to us. We want to see it.
Pictures are great.
Pictures are good.
I mean, it is a titan of fandom that for the longest time, it was the invisible fandom, because I remember when you would talk to most, even hardcore sci-fi fans, you'd say Doctor Who, and they'd go, who?
Right.
And it wasn't until the modern era that it blew up in America.
Right.
And so, I don't want to say it was like the dark times, but it was kind of interesting to see how it's always been here, and there were people supporting it, and now I'm glad to see that a lot of people love it, and it's gotten big enough now. There are people that are, I was into it when it was cool, and now it's not cool. Yeah.
Right.
I think Who fandom calls it the wilderness years.
Yeah.
That is correct.
Yeah. Our first episode is going to be Robot. We actually got together as a group, and we sat down and watched the Blu-rays.
Yep.
And we watched the episodes, and had some commentary amongst ourselves, kind of refresh ourselves on what Robot is.
Yep.
And I think we're ready to roll on that.
So if you want to keep up with us, if you have access to this by any means that are hopefully legal, please watch so that you'll be informed with us.
Yeah, you can get Robot on BritBox on Amazon Prime through the Classic Who. They have all the Classic Who's on BritBox minus a few Dalek episodes. We'll get into that during a behind-the-scenes thing of why that is. And then you can also get it on DVD, of course. You can get it on Blu-ray now, both in America and in the UK, and I'm sure most of the Western world at this point. So yeah, if you want to watch it, and then you'll be up to speed on our discussion for our next episode.
Be able to play along at home.
That's right.
Play the home game.
That's right.
All right. So I guess until next time.
Until next time.
Yeah.
Until next time.
See you, everybody.
Bye.
Doctor, you're being childish.
Well, of course I am. There's no point in being grown up if you can't be childish sometimes.
When your obituary is produced, wouldn't you like to be credited as a good actor elsewhere rather than simply in Doctor Who?
No, I don't think so, because I don't really rate my acting, but my Doctor Who was entirely Tom.